introduce John Voelz is a friend of mine and a lover of this Greater Jackson community, an artist, passionate artist, a driven artist, a caring artist, an innovator, creator of venues, a lover of his congregation and his colleagues at West Winds. By the way, a church, a ministry that every week, like in many ways across the street, every week we just hear great preaching and teaching, phenomenal. But he's written a book that I really like, and many have really liked it, Quirky Leadership, and I'm hoping that we have a chance to continue to learn, shall we say, at our brother's feet, who's been thinking about what it means to be leading in a wise, caring, intelligent way that doesn't just go rigidly by some book. In fact, one of the things I love about the book, John, is he's very transparent with his readers about the foibles, the strengths, the challenges of their pastoral team, West Winds, and very, very meaningful to me because a lot of that team was put together by my neighbor, Randy Schaefer, the late Randy Schaefer, who died long before I wish. And I even have, as a neighbor, a little bit of survivor's guilt. You know, I was older than Randy, and he passed a couple of years younger than me several years ago, and I say, Lord, these are mysteries that are profound. But thank you for bringing Randy into my life so that he could help to bring this fantastic team at West Winds, including our brother John. Let's give him a spring
Well, we are going to have some time today for Q&A, and seriously, especially if it's No Filter Friday, I have friends in the audience. If it's No Filter Friday, then you guys can feel free to ask me anything you want. I mentioned earlier that at West Winds we often issue a PG-13 warning, so I will just apologize in advance for anything that I might inadvertently say that gets me in trouble today. But I really, I don't desire to be a shock jock at all, but I think one of the things that people really appreciate about West Winds and what we have going there is its authenticity, and that's a highly overused word. I really think it is because you guys have heard of the word ethos, right? I mean, that's a word I'm a communication major, by the way, public address, and so I've taken a lot of the classes that you have in my lifetime, but ethos is one of those words that's really kind of been bastardized and ghettoized in our context, our church context, to mean what's cool or what's vibey or what's hipster, you know? So, hey, what's the ethos at your church, man? Oh, it's totally cool, you know, we got smoke and we got lights and, you know, we're doing the latest whatever song, it doesn't matter. And that's not what it means at all. It's an Aristotelian concept, and if somebody had good ethos as a public speaker or a leader of anything, it meant that you believed what he or she was saying, although back in Aristotle's time, if we're talking public address, we're probably talking more about what he was saying than she, unfortunately. But males kind of had a corner on that public speaking market back then. But we want West Winds to be that kind of a place where people believe, you know, that we're smoking what we're selling, right? That we're walking the talk, and so I think it's a very honest place. It's so funny. Last night I was preparing. I had band practice last night. We practice on Thursday nights, and I said, you know what? I want this to be super fresh the next morning, and so I'm just going to wait till the night before to prepare for this. And and I'm going to get home from practice about 9:30, something like that. So I'll have 2 or 3 hours because I'm a night owl, and then and I ended up just having fun and stayed up till 2. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning that I remembered that I had a radio show this morning to be a guest playing music and being interviewed on Hot Country 105 here in town at 6 a.m. And it was a 3-hour show. So woo! I'm running on 2.5 hours sleep, and so it's going to be a very fun day. All right, anybody have any questions so far? Fantastic. All right. I would like to share with you guys and maybe create some banter back and forth, some Q&A back and forth, and toss some things around about the things that I think you may not know about what is going to happen when you leave here. I want to talk about some of the things that you may think you know about the kinds of ministry positions that you're going to get into, or if you're taking a job in the private sector, corporate America, whatever it is, you may have some expectations because of the things that you're preparing for here, and I want to actually blow some of those expectations out of the water, maybe give you some food for thought and some tools to help you kind of move down the line. How many of you are going into ministry positions? I mean, you're really seeking like a ministry position in a church. Wow, seriously? That's so fantastic. Okay, so tell me more about what are you doing? What are you going to do when you graduate? If it's not ministry, what are you doing? Why are you here? What are you doing? Anybody?
Come on.
Seriously. Yes.
Do international journalism and war reporting.
International journalism and war reporting. That's amazing. And scary. You are much more brave than I. That scares me half to death. Wow. Anybody else?
Tell them what you want to do.
Going into radio.
Going to radio. Yeah, like what kind of radio?
Anyone that'll pay me.
High ambitions. That's awesome. That's perfect. No, that's good, actually. Hold life loosely, man. Just take opportunities. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Anybody else? Yeah.
I want to go into acting, like any kind of acting.
Any kind of acting, really. So like stage acting, the film acting, any of that.
I prefer film acting, but I'm willing to do both.
Okay, what are you doing right now in acting?
I wasn't able to get into any classes for the acting because I filled up really quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm taking an introduction into mass media, and I'm auditioning for anything that happens to pop up around here.
Good. That's the right answer. Don't worry about classes you couldn't get into. If that's your passion, if you wake up in the morning and that's all you can think about is acting, you should be acting. You should be doing that. You should be looking for every single opportunity there is to act. And seriously, that's fantastic. Anybody else? Yeah.
Voice acting.
Voice acting. I think that sounds like a good idea. How about you?
Well, that's what I'm doing. So.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Now, what are you doing right now for voiceovers and voice acting?
I'm working at the radio station, and I am part of a group that looks for jobs in voice acting for pet projects and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
I'm in a similar position, want to be an actor. I'll go for stage acting, film acting, voice acting, and I'm taking classes, auditioning for anything and everything that pops up. And also, every Saturday I just meet with my friends. We do a bunch of games, and I just try and record myself, just also putting on a show, putting on different voices, putting on different characters. I record that, and then I put it on YouTube. It doesn't pay, but it might in the long run.
Okay, that's awesome. So now you guys chose to go to a Christian university. So even when you're moving into these positions, you must be ministry minded to some degree, right? I mean, yeah? So I mean, you think that you're being called in to do something even if it's not in a church, you're called to do something to change your world for the sake of the kingdom. Yes? That's good. When I was in high school, I had a teacher's name was Lynn Bramkamp, and we had this class called Senior Problems. I remember my senior year, the class started by him shutting the door, and he said, "What I'm about to say for the rest of this semester could get me in trouble." And then he had a whole string of foul-mouthed things that he said after that, and he warned us about turning him in to the administration, trying to get him fired. Said people have tried to do it in the past, but he just for the whole semester he laid his heart out on the line, and it totally changed me. And I always liked that kind of honesty. I thought, man, I want to have that kind of honesty with people. If I have any influence on anybody at any time whatsoever for the rest of my life. So we're going to have a little bit of that honesty. And so I'm going to talk to you about the things that kind of scare me with you guys leaving here, going into whatever you do. And my first big scare is that you think that this school has prepared you for what you are about to encounter. Now, I'm not knocking school. I'm not knocking this institution. I love this institution. I love the people that work here. I have a ton of friends here. I've had, quite a few, handful, maybe a dozen, nearing 2 dozen interns that have come through Westwinds from students here. I love everything that's happening here. But if you think that what you're learning here, sitting here today even, although I think highly of what you're going to hear over the next few minutes. But if you think that is going to prepare you for what lies ahead, then you're sadly mistaken. The conversations that you have right now across the cafeteria table are going to be different when you leave this place. When I was in Bible college, when I was in seminary, the conversations that I had across the cafeteria table or the coffee shop table were things like, wow, I wonder what is more appropriate, the literal grammatical historical method of biblical interpretation or the literal grammatical historical method of interpretation. Man, I wonder if I can really help people understand the difference between transubstantiation and consubstantiation. Those conversations you will not have again. If you do, they're only for fun, and it's because you're totally bored and there's nothing else to talk about. Thank you. The conversations change. I didn't get prepared when I was in Bible college and seminary. I didn't get prepared for the call in the middle of the night or the Facebook message in the middle of the night with the guy who's got a gun in his mouth. Transubstantiate what? Those are the kinds of things that you're going to come in contact with when you leave here. So the best thing that you're going to learn here, in my opinion, in school is you're going to learn discipline. I mean, honestly, you're gonna learn to be on time. You're gonna learn to turn things in and think through things. You're gonna learn how to make some friendships along the way. But honestly, at the end of all of this, at the end of this road, to think that this is going to completely prepare you for what you're going into is a mistake. So how do you counteract that then? Well, one of the things that I think you do, and I'm just going to give you some things to hang your hat on because I've got a list of my top 10 today and I want to get through them all, is I think that you need to make a good use of your internships here. So I have had a sad string of interns at Westwinds from time to time. I mean, every once in a while I get a phenomenal one. You know Aaron Zrake? Aaron Zrake, he's my favorite intern. When he first came to Westwinds, and you can quote me on all of this, he hated Westwinds, and I don't think he even liked me very much, you know? And he just didn't know if that was the place for him. To watch what has happened to him over the last year plus is amazing to me. And when he finished his internship, he didn't finish his internship. He said, what else can I do? How else can I be involved? And project after project, he took the reins on, and we gave him permission to do many things. And I'm so proud of that kid. I can't even handle it. But that's how internships should go. is that you should find a place where you are plugging in and that you bleed for that place, and you don't just worry about checking off 80 hours or 120 hours or whatever your credit hours that you need to check off to fulfill that requirement. That's one of the few opportunities that you're really going to have to come in contact with the real world while you're here. So take some risks, talk to people. Okay. The second thing that I'm scared about is that you might think someone actually cares about your degree. I'm being kind of facetious here, but honestly, if you were applying for a job at Westwinds, I really wouldn't care what you learned here. Now, I'd be happy to know that you went through the process. I think that's cool. And degrees open up doors for you, and certainly education is something that I think you should do. I don't think everybody should do it, quite honestly, but I'm glad you're here. You should stick to it. You know, stay in school, kids. Say no to drugs. You should, like, that's absolutely wonderful. But to think that that's going to be your ticket to freedom, or your ticket to open up doors for you in the world of employment is not actually true, because really, honestly, people don't put a lot of weight on what you learned when you were in school. What they want to know is how you put that to use. And so honestly, the time that you're here, when you're logging in hours in books and study halls and those kinds of things, just think of those as like your volunteer hours. Like the stuff that really counts for you is the stuff that is the places that you're either creating venues or taking advantage of opportunities outside of here to, or even inside of here to put that stuff to work. So like I said, what are you doing with acting right now? You guys need to say yes to every single opportunity that you can possibly cram into your schedule. And none of this, stop boo-hooing. None of the, I mean, I'm on your team, all right? I'm on your team, but none of this, hey, I'm a student, and I just went through like a bad breakup, and things are kind of crazy at home right now, and I don't have much extra time, and I got a part-time job at Target, and like, quit making excuses, honestly, because if you piss away these years that you're here, and you don't take advantage of those opportunities, then it's just going to, sorry, I said the P word, then you are going to, you're going to be just that much further behind. You're going to have some catch up to do. So take advantage of every opportunity. Number 3, I fear that you'll think you know what it takes to lead in your new environment based on what you've learned here. The things that you're learning here, I'm sure, are fantastic. But if you take the things you learn here and you plunk yourself into any community anywhere, what's more important is that you know the zip code that you have just placed yourself into. And do you know what I mean by know your zip code? Like, you have to know the people. You have to know the places. You have to know, you have to frequent the places around your town. You want to have the kind of influence in the place where you are, where you can walk into any establishment. You can walk into, whether it's a brewery, if you're over 21, whether it's a restaurant, or you're going into a coffee shop, or whatever it is, you want to be able to walk in the door and have people know you. Right? And you want to invest, but more than that, you want to know those people. So those relationships that you're making in your zip code, reading the signs, seeing the things that are happening around here, are going to open up opportunities for you to do wonderful things in that community. But it's also going to create a world of opportunities for those people that are aching to be part of something special. It's going to create a world of opportunities for you to be the number one person that they go to when they need help, when they need guidance, when they want to know about Jesus. When it's Christmas time and everybody everywhere thinks that they should go to church just because it's the American thing to do, you want them to know you and have them come talk to you and say, where should I plug in? No matter what you're doing, if you're doing voiceovers, if you're acting, if you're working in a church, whatever the case is. Everybody everywhere wants to be part of something special. And you need to know your zip code. And you need to know the people that are in the environment that you work in. I mean, honestly, we kind of trade in the world of relationships. Nothing really matters outside of that. If you want to be in a job where you just punch a time card, 9 to 5, that's fine. There's a bajillion jobs like that. If you want to be an influencer, if you want to change the environment or the temperature of the place that God has placed you into, then it's going to mean that you're going to have to, introvert or extrovert, you're going to have to be involved with people. One of the things that I did when I was growing up in ministry is I wanted to know all the people that were at my church in California, and so I started inviting myself to job shadow people at their day jobs. So I was a pastor, and I'd go up to a guy and say, fantastic, what do you do? I'd find out what he did. He works at Hewlett-Packard. He makes these machines that use sound and light to clean medical instruments. And he says, oh, you're probably bored with that? I said, no, that sounds fascinating. I want to come to work with you for a day. And then I would spend an entire day job shadowing someone in a job that I would never, ever take part in. Like, I'm too dumb for those kinds of things. There's no way I would do those kinds of technical kinds of things. But I'll tell you what, you do 100 of those lunch dates with people, and they are going to go so far. When you're standing in front of a group of people, like when I'm standing in front of my church right now, and I know those 1,000 people that meet on the corner of Robinson and McCain, and I see them like as a guy with a guitar in my hand, or I'm speaking, I can look out at the room and I know what they do, not just the job that they have, but I intimately know what they do and I know what's going on in their lives. It makes my job so much easier too. Just that may not be the highest motivation, but I'll tell you, it's fascinating to have that connection with people. Invite people into your homes. You should be hospitable from day one. You should start cultivating hospitality in your hearts. Make room in your life for that right now. And one of the biggest things that you can do is invite people into your home and give them what I like to call the backlot tour. When I was a kid, I went to Disneyland quite a few times. I lived in California, and it was kind of an annual, biannual vacation for us. Have you ever been to Disneyland or Disney World? Okay, it's magical. I mean, mind-blowing. And I remember as a kid, we got this opportunity to go on the backlot tour where they take you on this tram and they take you behind like all the animatronics and show you how things are made and everything. And I remember crying as a kid because it rocked my world, because the magic had disappeared for me, right? It's like no longer did I think those things just happened magically. They sprinkle unicorn blood on it or whatever it is to make those things work. It's like I saw like the dirtiness of what happens. I saw the junk that was lying behind It's a Small World, and I saw broken animatronics, I mean, it was horrible. But I like that concept in that if we talk about authenticity and what's going to kind of move you forward in whatever job that you're doing, in whatever ministry context, because you're all going to be in ministry no matter what you're doing if you're a Jesus follower, give people the backlot tour. Let them into your house. Let them see it dirty every once in a while. Let them hear you yell at your kids when you have them. Let them see that you're not perfect, and that will go far for you. Okay. So let's see. The other thing that maybe about knowing what to lead in your new environment is know your leader's vision. The person that you are working for, know what they want. Because whatever job you lead in, and God bless you if you have these big dreams and you want to be a world changer and you want to be an envelope pusher and all those things, I mean, that stuff courses through my veins. I love that stuff. But if you're working with other people, you need to know what makes their heart race a little bit faster, and you need to know how to rhyme with what they're doing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Another fear that I have is that wherever you end up, that you'll want to be liked. And that will become a motivating factor for you. Maybe that you want to be the cool person. I've played that game, and cool is fleeting. And there is always somebody who will think that you're super-de-duper uncool. And people are mean, and people are judgmental. And there will be no shortage of people who will want to tell you, and who will tell you, that you're not cool. and that you're not cutting the mustard, as my grandfather used to say. I remember when I was in California just starting out in ministry and I had super thin skin. I was leading at a church that I actually, as a like 19, 20-year-old, I had taken part in helping to plant this church, and then they hired me back on staff. And one of my first weekends in front of people with a guitar in my hand, thinking, man, the Holy Spirit has rained down upon this place. You know, I mean, it was just like, it was a mountaintop experience for me. I just loved what was happening, loved the people I worked with, and I remember getting a card that was submitted in the offering basket, but like comment cards, which I think are the spawn of the devil, by the way. Like, if you're ever in a church and you have any influence, get rid of those freaking comment cards. They're horrible. Like, everybody's got an opinion, and not all of them count, and we're going to talk about that. But they took the comment card and they flipped it over and they drew stick figures of how we should possibly rearrange the stage so that God could show up. And I looked at the stick figures, and only one of them had a name tag, and that was me. And I was in the very back corner of the diagram that they had drawn. And I remember going to my senior pastor and just feeling like such an idiot and thinking maybe ministry is not for me. Look, at people will say things to you that will kill you. And opinions are like armpits. Somebody once told me everybody has them. They all stink. If you think that there is a bit of truth in every piece of criticism, it is a lie. Don't listen to that. Don't let anybody tell you that. That there's a bit of truth in every bit of criticism, that you can learn something about yourself even when people say mean, nasty things. No, that is crazy. That is not true at all. Some people say things just to hurt you. Some people will say things just to see if you can get riled up. Some people will try to run you out of town. Those opinions do not count. When I moved here from California, I took over, it was a nasty situation. Our senior founding pastor had left, there was some unrest, half of our staff had left, half of our staff that was still there was flipping one another off in the halls and calling one another names, and nobody knew what was going on, and it was a horrible, horrible, horrible place to be. And I came home about a year into being there and thinking, Lord, what in the world am I doing here? Finding my wife crumpled on the floor in our walk-in closet crying. And I won't tell you exactly what she said because it may cross the PG-13 border. But she said, get us out of here. I want to go home. And it wasn't just because we had come from the land of many restaurants and now we had few restaurant choices. It wasn't that. It was because people were mean. And things that people said on the internet, I wanted to grab them. I wanted to kick them in the teeth, some of them, but I wanted to grab them and shake them and say, I have kids. It's the World Wide Web. Do you understand that? Like, this is not a private little battle that we're having here. You have shared your grievances with me, with the whole entire world, and more importantly, my family. And you talk bad about my family, I will go to prison for my family. You know what I'm saying? I will take you down to Chinatown. Like, we're gonna have words. So people will be mean. So what do you do with criticism? You weigh it. You do not count it. You weigh it. You don't count it. I'll take criticism from people I know that I've invited into my life to give me criticism. And those are the only people that you should be allowing to give you hard criticism. Not every opinion counts. And that doesn't mean that people are less lovely, although some of them are. It's just that criticism works best inside of relationship. If my friend Paul Patton takes me out to coffee, the most passionate person I know, I've never seen somebody get so worked up over a cup of coffee when I'm sitting across the table at a coffee shop with him. He's got like a soliloquy, you know, he just breaks into it, oh, the coffee, you know? I mean, like if that guy wants to take me to task, if he's got some things to say to me and he says, man, I see some things in your life that are just, well, he's got my full attention. He can draw a stick figure of me in the corner any day he wants if I'm being that person, if I'm full of myself. But if somebody, even from my church, wants to go to the mat because they don't like something that I've done or because of preference or because of style, it just doesn't count the same. And so weigh criticism, do not count it. Another fear I have is that you'll know what you think you're supposed to be, but you won't know who you are. That you'll get into a position and you'll think you know what you're supposed to do, but you still don't know who you are. And honestly, finding out who you are and who God has made you to be is a constant, lifelong game of tiny surrender after tiny surrender. You will not figure it out from the beginning. And no matter what you learn here, and no matter the wealth of knowledge that you go into the workforce with, you need to know who you are. And you need to hold life loosely. And you need to invite the Holy Spirit to change you and to change your mind about things and to grow through things. And to be made available. Know that God's not afraid of your honesty. Know that you can't trip him out. Tell him all of your hopes and all of your dreams and be transparent with all the things that screw you up in your life and hold that all up to him and say, God, help me find out who I am. And as you go along the line, you need to develop what Larry Osborne calls plumb lines. He wrote a book called Sticky Teams, which is a great book if you're a leader of teams. He doesn't dive too much into the concept of plumb lines. I actually kind of picked up on it in my book, Quirky Leadership, because I loved what he was saying. But plumb lines are those things that you believe to be true about life in whatever ministry context that you're in, whatever job you have, whatever career you have, in the church or outside of the church, or those mountains that you would die on, those things that you believe at the very heart of who you are. Those things that you know to be true at your very core. And they're not necessarily biblical concepts. They're not even things that you have to prove to people. And actually, I would say if you have plumb lines, it's not your job to try to prove those to other people. If you believe them, and they're going to steer your life. But what you need to do is you need to take those concepts and you need to be able to explain to people why you believe so strongly about those things. So let me give you an example from what happens in my context. I am known, if you ask people to list my labels and talk about my quirks, one of the things that they will say in my context at church is that I'm a perfectionist. And they'll say things, and I've heard them say this to my face and in roundabout ways. Oh, yeah, maybe we should, not ask permission. It's easier to get forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. Don't go to John and ask him about this because he's going to say no about putting this poster up, or this artwork is not going to be approved, or this doesn't fit the vibe of what's happening at Westwood. So if you really want to get something done, you have to circumvent, you have to kind of go around the system. Now, they are very true. I fought with perfectionism my entire life. They're right. But there is a deep-seated belief behind all of those things, behind me not wanting them to take a piece of paper that they've scribbled on and put it up with Scotch tape on the wall of Westwinds. There is a reason why I don't want that up there, and it's not just because I think it looks tacky. I think it looks tacky. But that's not why. There's something much deeper than that. And this is one of my plumb lines. And I believe that people, God, and the people that we work with are worth our absolute very best. So like on the music team, like Rachel, I'm going to call you out. Okay, so you've been on the music team before, and sometimes we'll beat songs to death. We'll go over them 10, 15 times trying to find that right that right little magical equation, because it has to work. Now, you can write that off as perfection, or you can say, like I do, everybody on this team that's given up 10 hours this week to be on this band is counting on you getting your rear in gear and knowing your part. And so we'll go over this friggin' song until it's good, because everybody else has put the time in. People on this team are worth it. And the people that have to listen to this song that we're going to play on Sunday, they're totally worth it. They need to hear it the way it's supposed to be heard. And more than all of that, God is worth our absolute very, very best. And so you need to be able to develop some plumb lines, start with your quirks, and list all of your labels, all of the funny things people say about you, and then create some small paragraph statements that kind of define what drives you in life. And then don't apologize for those things. Just be able to explain them. So at Westwoods, we always like to say, don't apologize, but don't be a jackass. Right? Like, you don't have to, because I said so, that's being a jackass. You have to not apologize for what you deeply believe about ministry concepts, or what you believe about the way that your work life works, but you have to bring in people, you have to invite people into that process with you and let them see the man behind the curtain. The other thing that I'm afraid of is that you'll want to be noticed in a world now where more than ever platform has become king. And it's become very popular to outwit one another on Twitter, to be the first one to adopt a new technology, to have the most hits on your blog, although most people don't care about that anymore, the most friends on Facebook, whatever, to be an innovator, to be recognized in that world. It doesn't matter. You can write that down. Don't let that stuff trip you up. I've been caught up in that game. It's really easy to get part of that mess. And I know a bunch of my pastor friends that have been caught up in that, always trying to one-up one another, always having the best quote for the day, always trying to get the most retweets on something. But we've coined that term, a term for that at Westwoods. We call it pasturbation. Constantly talking about yourself in the world of social networking. Self-aggrandizing, making yourself a platform, always being on a soapbox. It's my fear that you'll want to be noticed in a world where platform is king, because you get applauded for it in this world. And the applause feel good. They really do. But seldom do people take you aside and say, wow, you really do like the sound of your own voice. Every once in a while, you find somebody who cares, that says something like that to you. Somebody whose opinion counts, and somebody whose opinion you weigh, and you should listen to. But a lot of times, like workaholism, those things get applauded in ministry contexts. The hardest workers, the ones who are speaking the loudest, don't let the larger church context, larger ministry context distract you from the people that you need to be investing in. Those people matter, and barely anyone else does, honestly. We did something at Westwoods a few years ago with Twitter when nobody was talking about Twitter. Nobody knew what it was. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. This is just a fact of life. Nobody really knew what it was. And I had this aha moment at a conference where I put Twitter up on screens at a conference and had people speaking back and forth, like got them signed up for Twitter. And we were speaking back and forth and had it on the screens. And I thought, this is so great. I'm emceeing this conference, but this could work in our church context. And so we did it at Westwinds for a while. We invited people in the process. It was great. We had classes after. I invited people to do this. It was a real hands-on experience. It was very interactive, and it was fun experiment in our context. And a very well-known author, theologian, pastor, very well-known, said some of the nastiest things about me for doing this in our church context. And I remember writing him a letter and saying, when I was a kid, I was 19 years old. I read a book that taught me to be daring, that taught me to embrace the person that God made me to be, to always be looking for opportunity, to be investing in the people that I'm doing life with, to bleed for those people. And you know who wrote that book? You did, sir. You wrote it. And now you have just destroyed me on the World Wide Web. Listen, I care about the 1,000 people that meet on the corner of Robinson and McCain. You're not in my context. I'm not in yours. Why have we given ourselves this why do we think it is our privilege and our right to be able to speak into other people's contexts when we don't know the people that are there? Another worry I have is that you'll do what everyone else does. I think our churches especially have become like Costco, they've become like IKEA, they've become clip art. And it's time for us all to get back into the kitchen and actually make something worthwhile. Instead of eating the hot lunch program that is fed to us just because we signed up for the cheap meal plan. You know, how many of you are musicians? How many of you are musicians? Okay, how many of you plan on doing music in a church context or to some degree? Okay, you do not even have to be a real musician or an artist in any way, shape, or form to get a full-time job in a church anymore. Because churches don't care. They don't want artists. Artists rock the boat. Artists piss people off. Artists make people very angry. They don't want artists. They want to know that you know exactly where to go to be able to download the material that they want to hear on a weekend, and they want to make sure that you can make a carbon copy of that and you can regurgitate it for the people. That's all they want. That should scare us. That should scare us. If you consider yourself an artist, you know that you are in for an uphill battle. When you are taking over a country, you want to go in and violently take over a country as a dictator. You're going to get rid of the very smart people, the doctors, the mathematicians, the scientists, and you're going to take out the artists. Because the artists speak the mind of the people. Because the artists stand in the gap. Because the artists say things that nobody else will say. And so get back in the kitchen. Another thing that scares me is that you'll stop dreaming and using your imagination. I want to leave some room for Q&A, so I'm going to kind of buzz through the rest of these. I have a fear that you'll think you'll be able to do the things that you've always dreamed about, and that's not necessarily the truth. Ministry contexts are desperately in need of imagination and permission. They're in low supply, and it is an uphill battle for you to inject those things into your context. And you are going to have a long, hard road of inviting people into conversation and letting them see what's inside of your head and trying to understand one another, because you won't necessarily hop into a ministry context and be able to do whatever you want. I think my biggest fear, I'm just going to skip to the end here, is that you'll become so wrapped up in what you're doing that you'll leave Jesus behind. When I was in Bible college, at university up in Portland, doing my undergrad, I remember we had, I forget how many hours of Bible we were required. I think it was 52 hours that we were required to have of Bible and theology. We had to have 2 majors. And I think at the end of that 4-year period of time with my undergrad, that I had read my Bible more than I thought was humanly possible. But I don't feel like I read my Bible for 4 years. You know what I'm saying? And it's so easy to do that. When you get out of here, when there's not an assignment that's up ahead, when you're not required to do something, it's so easy to forget what inspired you in the first place and just begin punching the clock and trying to make a paycheck and even more than that, maybe getting so caught up in being an innovator and always thinking about the next project that lies ahead that Jesus gets left out in the process. So there was an artist, and he walked into a class for the first time, and he met his teacher, and his teacher looked at him and said, "So you fancy yourself an artist?" He said, "Well, I like to think of myself as a creative. That's what we're calling ourselves these days." And the teacher said, "Very impressive. What kind of a creator are you?" "Well, I think I'm innovative. I make things up out of my head. My friends like to say that I'm an idea person." "That's awesome." So the teacher said, "Well, tell me this. What do you like to do most?" So, "Well, I like to sing." "Okay, well, if you could no longer sing, you no longer had a singing voice, what would you do?" I've never really thought about that. "I would probably write poetry. I enjoy writing poetry." "Awesome. So you would write poetry, but what if you lost your hands and you could no longer type or write with a pen, what would you do?" And the student said, "Well, I'd probably speak poetry. I'd memorize it, and I'd throw down rhymes." I said, "That's great. What if you completely lost your voice?" The students get frustrated. "I'd probably, kick my feet. I'd kick a drum. I'd dance." And he knew what was coming next. "Well, what if you lost your legs?" "Okay, get to the bottom of this. What are you really asking me?" And the teacher said, "Well, I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what kind of an artist you are. I want to know why you do what you do." And the student, the artist was kind of offended and spoke up, kind of, got his back up and said, "Well, it's because I have something to say. Because there's things that need to be said that are important, because somebody needs to stand in the gap, because sometimes people don't see what's right on the surface, and we need to bring that to light, and sometimes the artist is the only person that can say that in the way he or she can say that." And the teacher said, "Very good. So you're a prophet. The world needs more prophets." And the student laughed and said, "What, like Benny Hinn or like the lady from the Matrix movies? I don't know what you're talking about." And the teacher chuckled and got out a big sketch pad, and the teacher started drawing on it, and the student, the artist, was looking over at what was being drawn, and he couldn't believe what he saw. There was this train that was going down a train track through this beautiful landscape, but the thing about this drawing is that it was animated. It was alive, and as the teacher was sketching, this train is moving at breakneck speed. It's actually moving. He can feel the wind coming off of the page as he's looking at this. He can't believe it, and this train is about to derail, and he rubs his eyes and he stands back and he looks at the page and it's gone. And he looks around the room and says, "Well, am I the only person that saw this?" The teacher said, "Yeah, exactly right. And that's why the world needs you. Let's give it a shot." So he puts the sketch pad in the hands of the student, of the artist, and he draws, the teacher draws a stick man, just a stick man, just kind of a rough figure, and he writes the word religiosity above it, and he says, "Go ahead, make me some art." And the student says, "Oh, this is fantastic. I have something to say about religiosity. Man, I have grown up in situations, I know how to change the world." And he gets out all of his pastels and his oil paints and his acrylics and his color pencils and everything, and he says, "Wait a second, this is probably overkill for this." And he's feeling a little bit snarky. He draws a suit, a three-piece suit on this man in this photo, and he says, "There you go. That's religiosity." And the teacher stood back and said, "Really? That's what you're going to say? What do we do with this guy? Do we just poke fun at him now? What do we give him the finger? Do we talk behind his back? Do we berate him on the World Wide Web? What do we do?" And the student feels really bad about this. So he's feeling fun. And he takes out his pencil once again, and above the word religiosity, he writes the word captain. And he draws underwear on the outside of his pants, and he calls him Captain Religiosity, and he says to the teacher, "We need to redeem him." And the teacher says, "Tell me about this guy. I like this guy." He says, "Well, he's fun." "Yeah? I mean, he really speaks his mind." "Yeah? I mean, he says things that nobody else is saying." "Yeah? Yeah, he dares to go where no one has gone before. Yes, 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 tell me more. Everybody likes this guy. The teacher says, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. You sure about that? And then the artist starts to remember stories that he heard about Nathan the prophet walking in and going into the court of the king and calling him out. And the prophet Ezekiel, lying on his side and making bread over poo. And the prophet Hosea marrying a prostitute. And he said, yeah, these people weren't really liked. And the teacher takes this masterpiece that he's created and he crumples it up and he throws it into the trash. And the artist says, what are you doing? People need to know this person. I mean, we need to get this person out in front of everybody. We need to package this guy. I mean, everybody everywhere, in whatever context they're in, they need to know this person. And the teacher sat back and said, the world does not need to know this person. The world needs to know these people. All right. If you have any questions, let's talk. We got a few minutes. Yeah.
You said about, I guess the story kind of illustrates this, but to put it in like basic terms, you talked about being an artist or being a creative, creating your own vision or whatever, but leading people with that. But what is the balance? Because I think a lot of artists struggle with this. What is the balance of self-expression and actually speaking to the people in a way that they need to?
Well, honestly, that's a good question. What's the difference between self-expression and actually speaking to the people? I think one of the things the church has got wrong over the years is to think that art actually has an end, and that end is evangelism. That's where all art goes bad in the church. Like they think that art is a flip chart presentation to Jesus. That we're going to walk people through our art, that we're going to explain it all the way, and at the end of it, they're going to fall to their knees and sign on the dotted line, and then they're going to tell two friends about it. Like, and that's not what art does. Art it stirs the pot. Good art asks questions. Good art invites people into conversation. Good art creates tension. Good art doesn't always wrap up at the end of a 30-minute sermon. So it's a lifelong thing. And so I don't know that there is a difference. I think that God has created you to express the things that he has put on your heart. And you create those things and you invite people into conversation. And it might mean that somebody along the line, that they have an aha moment, a Damascus Road experience with your piece of art. And something may never happen. Maybe you don't know what's happening. You won't see it this side of eternity. Maybe 10 years later, you're going to get a call from one of your interns that you work with who says, let me tell you how this changed my life. You don't know. You just keep doing it. And you just keep offering it up to God. Somebody else? Yeah.
In the light of this concept of mass media and popularity and what you just said about we just need to be who we are for the community who we are.
Sure.
Compare the value of, say, a Switchfoot concert with 3 people chatting in the dorm room as far as ministry.
As far as ministry...
Yeah, as far as us as individuals carrying out our call.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard to know. Honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with Christian music or any music that, even if they're not being touted as a Christian band. I know they're playing here right now, and I love Switchfoot. I'm a fan of Switchfoot. I get that, but I honestly think that the presentational kind of Christianity, the if you build it, they will come, the come and see kind of Christianity is really a thing of the past. And kind of people already kind of know our tricks, and they know what's up our sleeves. It's been so many years of that kind of a gospel presentation that people can smell that from a mile away. And so I think what happens best at concerts like a band like Switchfoot, fantastic band again, I'll just keep saying it over and over, not knocking them, is that we love them and that we enjoy them. But as far as an evangelism kind of an opportunity, I think the world has moved past that. And what I mean by that is I think that they can smell a fake and they can smell the flip chart presentation and they know what we're trying to do, and what they want to know is they want to be known. And so talking to people in the dorm room, or even starting conversations and relationships with people in social networking situations that can lead to deeper community, I think that's where the real stuff is happening. Now, I don't want to knock it. You know, somebody might come to Jesus tonight. It's very possible. God can use anything he does, but I see that becoming less and less of an effective means of gospel presentation.
A couple more minutes. Got it.
Does that answer your question?
It's good stuff. I was leaning
Okay.
towards our calling, our call to be authentic, to
Okay.
touch people one-on-one without this idea that we will ever be Switchfoot, or we'll ever be famous, or that our book will ever be a bestseller.
Oh gosh, yeah. The platform
Yeah.
doesn't matter. No. You be you to the people who know you. Yeah. Go ahead.
You were talking about the concept of authenticity, and I think often, a lot of times what churches strive to do is to be relatable to people coming in regardless of their walk, and I wonder sometimes where the tension falls between being relatable, which sometimes can just be from people who've never encountered Christ before, and not allowing ourselves to be rude in a way, or sort of like holding yourselves back in order not to seem holier than thou. How do you hold that tension?
Yeah. Well, there's a trend still in churches, and it has been for years, where you kind of define your demographic. Who are the people we are trying to reach, and now how are we going to be relevant to this group of people? What kinds of things are we going to create? What kind of art are we going to make? What kind of conversations? How do we talk? What kind of programs do we have? And I think that's the wrong starting point. I think that a good starting point is to say, God, who do we have on our staff? Who have you brought here? Who are the people in this mix? Who want to volunteer their time? How have you made us? And then teach those people to be the best people they possibly can be, the best version of themselves for God, and then to just be them in the context, to make the art they make, to say the things they say, to create the venues they create. And then people are going to be attracted to that kind of honesty, because honestly, seriously, we need, the smoke and lights is nauseating. Like, people know that, and they don't want part of that. I'm not knocking smoke and lights, you know what I'm saying though. Like, trying to just be hip.
Let's give